Hello there, and welcome to the impzonepod podcast. We're back once again, to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans. And I'm not going to keep talking like that, on and off, but it is one of those things. It's a funny world we live in sometimes, by Master Jack. But yes, just watched this week's episode of TNA, and was it 2 or 3 matches? They've only announced 2 matches for Genesis, but it looks like at least 3 or 4 matches are cooking, or maybe 5 matches so far are cooking together, and we can sort of tell where things are going. We sort of felt like some of this stuff was coming, but it's always one of those things. It's like, well, sometimes it's like these things don't really come together sometimes. Like, it's like, man, it really feels bad when you have, like, some of these things that are just like, this has been going on for months, but there hasn't really been much happening with it because, well, either there hasn't been the time or they've been focusing on something else. So it's just one of those things. I guess I'm going to start with the Hardys versus the Rascals. Again, every single thing that we can say, these are going to be good matches. Always going to be very good matches, but I don't think there's much in this, honestly. Unfortunately, the Rascals will get their time to shine against the Hardys, and this will again be a good match. But the thing is, like, are they winning these titles? What's the point in them, like, wandering away with the titles? Where's the, like, some people might be invested in the Rascals to win these titles, but where's the investment? Like, where's the story of, like, why do they need to win? There isn't one. They basically just said, hey, we want a shot at those titles, and hey, they're getting a shot at those titles. So maybe they can do a bit more next week or in the next couple of weeks up to the build, but realistically, there isn't that much here to talk about because, they've only been building this for like a couple of weeks, and I know that that's just due to the fact that Hammerstone and got injured, and they were planning to have Hammerstone and Jake something go up against the Hardys. I think that's seemingly what they were planning to do before Hammerstone got injured. But yes, it is what it is. It is one of those things. They've got to have these quote-unquote filler matches, but it isn't a filler match, but as far as a match is concerned, but as far as story-wise, there isn't much here to write home about. Like, it's like, again, they could do more, but we'll wait and see. I certainly hope for the best, but again, there's not much here to talk about. As far as the match with Moose and Ace Austin goes, though, I think there's a little bit more here, but I also feel like they really should have, like, came out with a little bit more of this sort of, like, story that Ace Austin was telling before, but, like, I guess it's one of those things that it really helped, sort of set up this story with Moose, so that is cool. I kind of feel like, unfortunately, it's one of those things, Ace isn't winning this thing. I wouldn't mind seeing him win it, but I think Moose is, only really just won it. So, and it's like, it's not the right person for Moose to lose it to, I don't think. And this is, like, again, one of his first offenses. I actually want to pause just before I actually, like, finally put the nail in the coffin, or so to speak, on my thoughts on this one, which is, so much for Moose coming out and saying, hey, I'm going to get rid of the X Division title. Maybe he's going to do it next week or something in the next couple of weeks, but he didn't do it this week. I don't know whether that's actually a thing or whether this is just some people saying, oh, Moose is getting rid of the X Division title or something like that. Just something negative to say about TNA and whatnot. So I don't know if that's actually true at all. So it's just one of those things again. It's just so annoying, these, like, false reports and that sort of stuff going on out there. So, but yeah, that is what it is. He didn't come out and say, hey, I'm going to debut a new title, or I'm going to retire this title, or I throw down this title as a piece of garbage, or anything like that. No, he came out and he said, I challenge you, to challenge me, because I am the franchise player. And if you're talking about becoming the franchise player, well, I am the franchise player. Hey, fair enough. I kind of want to see it. I don't know whether they've wrestled very much, like, out there. So, there is some of this, like, little bit of hype, but then again, it's just one of those things. I just don't see Ace winning. It's just, again, not the right time, not the right sort of thing. I kind of feel like he should be getting into that like world title picture, but it's very tough because, again, it's like, well, who's he gonna go up against? I don't know. And actually, honestly, in a way, they kind of need to start pushing Ryan Nemeth in some ways. They need to give him a few wins, so because he's got, like, getting some decent heat out there. But he just needs wins, it needs to be, like, seemingly like he can be, like, a top guy in some ways, or a top heel in some ways, so that, people, who do beat him feel like, or, potentially he could become world champion at some point, or, whatever it is. It's just one of those things. I don't know. I kind of almost feel like the story, it might be there somewhere, that, because it seemed like what we, or I thought, was perhaps Nick Nemeth will turn heel. And maybe he will, I don't know. Again, it's not implausible. But Ryan Nemeth has already almost turned heel, so I don't know whether, like... But then again, he's kind of not turned fully heel, at least with his brother. So perhaps he'll turn on his brother, thus, fully, like, going down that path more so. I can kind of see that. I could kind of see, like, him revealing that he was the one behind Layfield. Like, that would kind of be more interesting in some ways. But then again, it's like, well, I don't know. It's really tough because it's like, well, like, the motivation was to keep the title on his brother and whatnot, I guess, and then to try to beat him for the title or whatever, and that sort of thing. I don't know. I think that does sound interesting in some regards, but it's very, very difficult to not explain, but it's very difficult to kind of buy in at this point, because it's like, this is the point that you would need to buy in some regards, in some fashion, because it's like, well, he hasn't won very many matches, if any matches, and he hasn't even been on TV a whole lot. But yeah, like, it is what it is. So we can only do with it what we know. But yeah, it is one of those things. This, and again, I want to say about this, was the first, debut episode of TNA on the Sportsnet in Canada. So that was that. Hopefully they did some good numbers there. We'll have to wait and see a bit more about it, but we'll find out. Next week seems pretty good too, pretty stacked. Obviously, with next week, we're talking more about what's coming at Genesis. Seems like a rivalry between the Walking Weapon and Santana is going to go down at Genesis. Probably one of Walking Weapon's last matches, honestly, in the company. But it is what it is, so, we'll wait and see. And same with, like, Tessa and Jordan seems to be going down at Genesis. And it seems like Rosemary versus Marsha going down at Genesis. Also seems like the Elegance pair going against Spitfire at Genesis. That might be on the pre-show, I don't know. Some form or some faction of Gresham, Macklin and Eric Young versus the System, or some other trio of some sort, perhaps, happening next week. That has to lead into something more. I'm not 100%. Maybe like 3 singles matches, but that's kind of a lot of singles matches. So I'm not sure there, but yeah, interesting to think. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing a Lethal Lockdown or whatever. But then again, they often just have 5 people, so 3-on-3. I mean, I think 3-on-3 would, like a 6-man match would probably still be good enough, because it's like once you get too many bodies in there, it's like, yeah, a bit much anyway. So it's like, well, that might work out pretty well. But then again, it's like, well, we know Gresham's probably leaving as well. So it's like, well, difficult situations. And I said it in another video that I think it's still coming out at some point, is that they need to sort of rebuild their roster and whatnot. And it's like a couple of the people that they're now sort of featuring, like Ryan Nemeth and people like this, is like, well, they know that they need to like try to rebuild their roster, and they have some of these guys on a contract of some sort at least. And it's like, well, we've got to use some of these people. And it's nice to see Savannah Evans coming back next week as well, because it's like, bro, where's this person been? At least put them on Explosion or something. Maybe their matches wouldn't be that amazing, but at least you'd be like showing people who really care about, like, this person, hey, they're winning, and they're still here, and they're still figured in, and we still are trying to do something with them. Yeah, with a 2-hour show, sometimes it is a lot of stuff that you've got to try to fit in there. But again, it's just one of those things that, and again, like having a few good matches and whatnot, that main event match was really good, but it probably could have been a bit shorter, probably. Yeah, I don't know. It's really tough, because it's like, well, you want to have these good matches, but it's like, well, you can't have, like, again, I talked about this before, like, they need to be short good matches in a way. They need to be, palatable, in some form, in some fashion, because you've only got so many minutes. And again, like most people, again, care more about the characters, the moments, the promos, and the matches are more or less payoffs for, for these things, or to set up these things, or whatever, that sort of thing. But, sometimes they do that really, really well. Like, I think, like, when you have Ace Austin winning that match with Kushida, who just was number 1 contender, it's like, yeah, that's not the best, like, way to get to be number 1 contender, but it's like, we knew his motivations, and he's been on a winning streak in the singles divisions for a little, since he beat Trent Seven. So, and I don't know what's happening with Trent Seven. I'm assuming he's already left, because we knew that he was apparently leaving at some point as well. So I really feel like TNA, like, I go more into depth with this in that video, or in that episode, so do go and check that out. But they really, really need to pick up some talent, and, like, I'd love to see Miro come into TNA, because I think Miro could do some stuff in TNA. I think he could be he could actually be a major player there. I think an Andrade should have gone to TNA, probably, because there he could have actually potentially won the world title, or done something, if he had have stuck around for a few months or whatever, he would have won the title by now. He would have been figured in, he would have been doing something. A lot of these people, if they come and say, okay, I'll put in 6 months or a year or whatever it is, in that time you'll probably do something major, because the company knows, hey, well, we've got this, high stakes person on our list. And I feel like, again, like we talked about Tesha coming back, and it's like, she's obviously coming to face Marsha at some point. I'm not 100% sure when. I don't know whether Tessa should win the title. I think I went back and forth on that as well. But it's like, well, why not? How about she wins it and then she loses it to somebody else, like in a few months' time, and that sort of thing, or whatever. Because I like Marsha, but I don't think she's that great as a character. I think she's great as a wrestler. I don't think she's that great as a character. I like Tasha Steelz a whole lot more because she's got a whole lot more character to her. And I continue to notice this, like with a lot of things. I like people with personality, like even if they're a heel. It's like I really like, and I think everyone does. I think like people remember The Rock, people remember Stone Cold Steve Austin. They remember those guys because their personalities, who they were, how they connected to those people. You know, at some point you do remember great wrestlers, like obviously, but it's like one of those things, like when you have a great wrestler who also has a great personality or can work a great personality. Look at Kurt Angle. You know, he's one of the greatest wrestlers ever, but he also went out there and had character work a lot of the time. He sometimes played the goof. People forget that he sometimes played a bit of a goof and whatnot. He wasn't always serious. You can't always be serious. Like sometimes you have to be super serious, but other times you have to be out there and being a bit of a goof, and you have to be able to understand your, again, we talked about understanding your role or knowing your role. When you're that heel, you've got to be out there and trying to be like, oh no, you know, you're too good for me. But then you're not trying to like you are trying to sell that, like, oh no, he's too good for me, like type thing, but you're trying to bait them into thinking, oh yeah, I've got him, and then it's like something else, you know, from out of nowhere, you know, they get that like low blow or whatever it is. Like I love to see like people talk about Perk Angle, but like I love Perk Angle, bro. Perk Angle is insane. Like anything that he does is great. Like I remember that promo that he did in WWE, where he talked about not liking, quote, the black people, and then saying, you know, I can say what I want because people will still cheer for me. And like a few months later, they were cheering for him. You know, it's crazy. It's one of those things that happens in wrestling. Like this is, you know, what wrestling fans get treated to on a week to week, month to month, whatever basis. You know, like we get treated to these stories, seeing this guy who's, you know, saying, oh, I'm not a fan of the black people or whatever it is, you know, which obviously is something, you know, that people would boo, or people would say, hey, now come on, you know, like that's a bit, you know, but like that's the point. You're meant to be like, hey, wait, you know, like that's a bit much, you know, like obviously. But again, that's kind of the point, is trying to get people to be like investing in somebody, because I think at that time he was feuding with Booker T and whatnot, or he had just been feuding with Booker T or something like that, and I think there were perhaps plans for him to feud with Shelton Benjamin or somebody like that, or something along those lines, and it was like, we've got to get this heat, you know, like, and that makes sense. It's like, okay, you're going to plan to do this, or you're going to plan to do that, and, you know, some of these plans fall through, always. But again, it's like, this is our plan, or this is our idea, let's, you know, start going down this route, so let's plant that seed, or let's, you know, start to make these statements, and so we can start from here to go, you know, from there with this, you know, person who's going to feud with them. And I don't know whether it happened or whether they just decided to go in a different route or whatever it was. But again, you know, that isn't really the important factor there. Like, again, and I don't want to gibber on about this stuff for too long, but that's just one of those things that you've got to create these little things. I love Leon Slater. He's really great. I think, like, I remember Rich Swann as being a babyface back in the day. Yeah, that wasn't too long ago, really, but he was a great babyface because he had all that charisma and he had that personality, and he could just, do it almost anything, and you would like be like just enamored with anything that he did. Um, he was a great athlete and a great wrestler, but he was a great personality as well. He sometimes, again, had some things that perhaps, I don't know, were a bit goofy or whatever else. But again, you know, you see some of these things. You don't have to just see a person being serious. When you see someone having fun and then somebody comes along and screws up all their fun that they've been having and, wrecks shop and whatever, it's like, damn, that's what I kind of wanted to see. I kind of wanted to see this guy having fun and jiving and whatever. Now this guy's come and ruined it or whatever it is, and now where are we at? We're, gonna see, you this person or that person versus this person, in a really serious like match because they hate each other now and, whatever else, so we apply that to any match. You see, the girls tonight win, which I actually didn't think they'd win. I thought that they would lose, but they won. And I thought it would work better if they lost. But again, it is what it is. But again, it's like, well, they won. They had their good moment, and they were up there and smiling. And then Tessa comes in and attacks Jordan, and then the Elegance pair attacks Spitfire, and then Rosemary attacks Slamovich. It's like, all these things are happening and whatnot, and you're seeing all these fights and whatever else going on. So it's very much like, this is where we're working towards and where we're going. There's all these things going on together. It's not just like you can paint one story in one brush stroke or whatever, in a sense, but you can do these multiple brush strokes together. That's fine. I think that even though it's a bit chaotic or whatever, but that's kind of the hook in a way, and that's the like, the moment of like this cliffhanger of like, oh, well, what's going to happen next week, type thing. I've got to tune in next week to see what happens, or I've got to tune into the pay-per-view to see what happens, and that's a TV that they sort of are sometimes missing. You need these things for people to go, oh crap, what's next, or really again connected to the characters. I liked Speedball Bailey as far as being a wrestler, but I never really connected to him as a character. He was just a very bland good guy, and I liked Rich Swann way more because he had personality. I like Leon Slater way more because he has that charisma, he has that personality, he has something that's connecting, to the fans, and I think a lot of the fans could see that. Nothing against Speedball Bailey, and I see some people saying this and that about him, or some of these other wrestlers. The same with Jake Something. I've never really gotten into him that much until he really turned heel a few months back, but then he's not really done anything, or they haven't really done anything with him. And I think this is the right time to kind of pull the trigger a little bit on him. Maybe not so much, but like a little bit, just to push him into a little bit more of a main event scene since, Hammerstone's gone. It's like, well, let's give him something to do. Let's give him some opponents to face. Let's give him a couple of wins against some people, and then let's, give him a major opponent like to face, like, and like maybe even bringing him up to being like facing some of these people, not at major shows perhaps, but at a minor show he can get a little bit of spotlight, and he can, challenge somebody like Joe Hendry or whoever it is, to become the champion. And it's like, well, we'll have to wait and see who, like, and again, like, it's a fairly thin roster in some ways. It's like, and like that whole 23, I think that's actually, like, maybe that's not even, like we talked about it maybe being a tag team, but it's maybe like maybe this is like more than just a tag team. Maybe this is like several debuts. It kind of need like they kind of need several debuts. They like I want to talk more about this again at some point, but like I talk about it a lot more in that other episode. But again, I'm hopeful for the best with the show, and it does seem to be going in an interesting, in a sense, direction. And again, it's one of those things that I see some of this stuff of people out there saying that Jordan doesn't want to work with Tessa, or didn't want to work with Tessa, or whatever it was, and all of that stuff. But it's like, again, like, I don't know, dude. Even if she says she doesn't want to work with her, well, that's too damn bad. That's how it's gonna be, and it's not like my most preferred thing, but it's like, well, there you go. This is what you're gonna be working with. And actually, I've heard people talking about the Rollins versus Punk promo that happened. I think it was last week. I'm not too sure. Sorry. And I guess it was fire and whatever. But I think Josh Alexander and Santana had a pretty darn fire. I mean, maybe it's not as good. Perhaps, I don't know. But again, still, some of these things, you need some of these things, some of these promos, some of these moments. And the Hendry promo at the start of the show was pretty good. And I think like the Nemeth promo was almost there, but I think it needed a little bit more something. And it kind of got trailed off by them putting Ryan Nemeth in there. I think they need to, I think, again, perhaps I am right with that, but again, it's going to play out, and we're going to find out at some point, because I am certainly sick of the whole, we don't know what Layfield's doing, we don't know what his relationship with Nemeth is, or whatever else it is. And maybe that whole thing of when he punched Ryan, it's like, well, that was to cover his tracks or whatever else, to make Nick Nemeth think, oh yeah, he wasn't my brother who hired this guy, he hasn't got anything to do with it, etc. That would make some sense, and I do think that would help Ryan, and it kind of would be, I think it would work well for him, because he's kind of like, you make him into the Dolph Ziggler 2.0 kind of thing. Like, he's now being the chicken shit heel with the, almost like Shawn Michaels back in the day. Like, he's the chicken shit heel with the big muscle behind him, like Diesel, like, do that whole thing, kind of. You don't have to do that whole kind of thing exactly. But again, I don't know, dude, that sounds kind of cool in some ways. It's kind of a callback. But it's been a callback for many other things. Like, that was like, Shawn and Diesel was a callback to obviously some other wrestler who debuted that concept of the little chicken shit heel and the big muscle, the imposing muscle. But yeah, like, there's a few people that I don't know. It's like you talk about Baron Corbin or some of these other people that could join the company or could come in. I don't know, dude. It's like, if they come in, they come in. Same thing with like anyone else. It's like, do you want to be here? Do you want a chance to, show what you can do here and actually, put on like, you can go to WWE, absolutely. And a few of these people went to AEW or wherever else or whatever else and took their luck. They spun the dice and they took their chances. But honestly, did any of them work out? Basically none. Hardly any. A very few did, but again, a lot of them didn't. So again, taking that and saying, okay, well, you have your chance to go back to WWE, where how much figured in are you going to be? Well, maybe you will be, maybe you won't be. But if you go to TNA, somewhere that has a lot of opportunity, it's like, well, even if you don't think you're going to be figured in, there's a lot of opportunity there, where in WWE, it's like, well, they already have their like mid-card pretty good. They already have their tag team pretty good. They already have like their upper card pretty good. They have everything pretty good. So it's like, well, where am I going to fit into that? It's like, yeah, I could be a part of already good mid card or already good, whatever division, but like at some point I either need to be the focal point or whatever of it, like, or I need to be elevated into it to make sure that, either I'm doing the best thing for me or I'm doing the best thing for whoever else needs to come up and be the next person. So it's a balancing, juggling act of all sorts of things. So yeah, we'll wait and see again, as I sort of say. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this one, and I hope you guys will join me in another one, because we'll be looking more at Genesis as they reveal more stuff. I'm sure this isn't the last one, and we'll certainly be doing a review afterwards. So hope you will join me in those.